So now we are going to adjust the vehicle speed. So on your script, double click it again. It moves your vehicle in 1 units per frame, but it depends on the computer. If your computer runs on 60 frames per second, then it will move in 60 units per second. And if you are using a different device that runs on a slower frames per second, like 30 frames per second, then it will move in like 30 units per second. So there's a bit of its inconsistency towards on how the vehicle moves. So what we're going to do is multiply time dot delta capital smaller copy delta time to your program capital T. And if you save it and go to your Unity window, you can see it's updating on the right side on the inspector, and the vehicle is still moving at a slower pace. So if you go to the tank, you can see that it's moving like 1 unit per second. The way to adjust the movement of the object is by multiplying it on another number. So this is how you multiply in programming. You use an asterisk, not an X, because X is identified as a letter and not as an operation. So if you multiply it by 20, it will move 20 units per second. So we'll try 10. Then we'll run the program. You can see on the player controller, it's updated. Run the program. And it's moving at about 10 units per second. And that's going to be average whatever FPS you have, so there will be consistency on your game. So now we are going to add weight and rigid bodies to our objects, so that when our tank runs, it will collide with this rock here. So the way to do that is click on your rock here, add a component called rigid body, and since we are on 3D, just use rigid body. Then on your tank, add a component rigid body as well, and we click play. If you click play, you can see here that our tank actually collided with the rock. Alright, so our rock is below the ground. Let's make sure it's somewhat above the ground. Yep, that's better. It's better. And we are going to focus on our tank. Press F to focus. So on the rigid body of your tank, you can adjust the mass and the weight of the pebble. On the rigid body of the tank, you can adjust its mass. So for example, it's a 110,000 kilogram tank, and the rock is 20 kilograms. And if you hit play, the rock is going to be hit by the car, but it's going to take slower because it's heavier. So the thing to look at here is the mesh collider, because if you turn off the mesh collider, it will stop colliding with different objects. So if we stop the mesh collider of the rock, it will go past through the road. Yep, so you don't want that to happen because you are already disabled the collision for the rock, so make sure it is on, so to enable the collision between different game objects. Yep, that looks good. Let's move the camera angle and use Y. Maybe like, oh, oops. Yeah, so we can see it and the rock. Let's move the rock a little bit, a little bit closer, and let's play. Yeah, looks good. Let's move a tank here. A little bit closer to the end of the road. A bit here. Let's see the camera. Yeah, I can zoom a little bit backwards. And move the rock a little bit closer to the camera so you can see it better here. Yep. Oh, that's nice. yeah, that's basically it. So now we are going to add our obstacles on the road. So we are going to create here an empty game object. So this is a placeholder and we can rename it to rocks, group of rocks, yeah, whatever name you want, and put rock under it, like inside it, not under it, because if you put it under it, it will not be a child of this group. So put it inside of it. So this is now the child and this is the parent. What we're gonna do is duplicate our rock. You can duplicate it by pressing Control plus D, and if you move it there, you can see that there's a second rock now. What we want to do is like maybe fill the road with different rocks. So let's make like 5 rocks. So there we go, and let's move the rock. So as you can see, if I move the rock left and right, it changes the z-axis. What we can do is just change the z-axis of every rock here instead of manually adjusting it. So that seems a bit better, adding 20 units every after rock. 80, and we got 100. Let's see it here. So we can add more rocks if we want, maybe add 2 more and change the position 120 and 140. So we'll switch our camera here so we can see the entire view of our tank wrecking the rocks. So let's hit play, and it hit 1 rock, it hit 2 rocks, it hit 3 rocks, and it's basically gonna hit all of the rocks here. So that's basically it, just duplicating the rocks, and let's move on. Now we're going to get started with variables. So double click your script here on your asset window once again, and as you can see here in our movement, the movement of our tank is moving at a whole number called a whole number 10. So if you want to edit that code, it will be hard and it's inconvenient because you have to go down on your program and find that. So what we do is we create a variable. The data type for our variable is going to be float because it's a decimal, and name it speed, and we're going to set the value to 10.0 f semicolon. We're gonna add f here because it's the basic syntax for initializing a float for C#, so it recognizes it as a float. So our variable is just a container of any kind of data type that you use for convenience instead of having it as a whole number or a whole letter or something like that. So it's better to call it using their name. For example, if you have a word here like start is called before the first frame update, so we're going to string and call it word statement, and we're going to add it here so that we only have to call statement and it's going to use this value instead of typing the whole thing on its own. So now we're going to use speed for our speed here and substitute this to speed, and click save, Control S, make sure to save so that your Unity window gets updated. Let's see here, and if we click play, you won't have any difference, it's the same, just the code is a little bit better. So let's try to change the speed. So if I want to change the speed, it's easy, just change it to 20, go back to your Unity editor, then click play, and as you can see, the speed of our truck tank becomes faster. So now we're going to talk about access modifiers. So go back to your script. So you can see here our class player controller has an access modifier called public. So it's public because other components or other classes can see and utilize this class, but if we turn this into private, then it won't be able to be accessed by other classes, but we'll leave it at public here. So what we want to do is have this speed here appear in our Unity editor. What we only have to do is add public and hit save, So if we go back to our Unity window, click on our tank, you can see here in our script there is a speed for your player. So if we click play and click on this speed and move it to left and right. So if it's on negative speed, it will go backward. And if it's on positive speed, it will go forward. So let's stop playing button. Let's stop playing the game. So if we stop playing the game, you can see here that the speed actually went back to 20, because if you are editing it on play mode, then once you stop playing the game, it will default back to what you have it in the start. So what you want to do is make sure that you're not in play mode, then change the speed here, then click play so that it will retain its value. You can see, so if I stop playing, the value is still 15.